Looking for some quick memory training tips and memory improvement advice from the memory experts? Not so fast. There's a ton of bad ideas going around, and we're going to put a stop to them right now, along with 3 far better suggestions that will help you use your memory better so you can learn faster than ever before. Hi there, this is Anthony Metivier from MagneticMemoryMethod.com, where I help mature learners of every age take mental adventures using memory techniques based on real tips that really help. Even better, our community helps you make learning easy, effective, elegant, and fun. So hit that subscribe button now and make sure to enable notifications with the bell icon. That way you won't miss a thing, especially our live streams where you can meet the valuable members of the Magnetic Memory Method community. And while you're subscribing, and even if you're already subscribed, hit that thumbs up. Let's go. Now, the first piece of bad memory training advice I've heard is probably the most dangerous. Don't memorize what you don't understand. This is horrible advice. Worse, it sometimes comes from people who really should know better. If I followed this advice personally, I would never have gotten a PhD, let alone 2 MAs and the BA I needed to get the other 3 degrees. Why? Because so many times it's precisely because I memorized something that I came to understand it. And I can give you endless examples. For one thing, when you're learning a language, you often need to memorize more than one meaning for an individual word. Take gerade in German, for example, which many native speakers cut down to grad in everyday speech. It can mean barely and just, or as in gerade stehen, to stand up straight. Well, when I learned this, I didn't understand that the words had all these other meanings, but understanding just one definition and then hearing it spoken in different contexts was the foundation by which I could perceive those other meanings. To take another example, I recently memorized 32 verses of some Sanskrit from the Ribhu Gita and have carried on with more from the Isha Upanishad. Now, I understood from the gist of the meaning from Aurobindo's translation in English, but it was only after I memorized it and reflected upon it in my meditation that a deeper understanding of the meaning emerged. Then on a live stream, the line came up. I recited it and started to understand it even more by explaining its meaning to others. Neither of these layers of understanding would have happened if I had tried to understand it before memorizing it. It's just not possible. This is generally true of memorizing poetry. It is only by memorizing poems that we truly understand what they mean. I've heard people tell me they've had similar experiences with memorizing mathematical concepts and formulas. Deep connections emerge due to and thanks to memorization. So the tip here is you don't have to understand things before you memorize them. Carpe diem and don't delay. Profound realizations await. Second point, you don't need a memory palace. Technically, this common suggestion is true. You don't need one. You need several, and frankly, as many as you can encourage yourself to make. The benefits of working with your spatial memory is profound because it provides a foundation and palette for working with the colors of all the other levels of memory: episodic, autobiographical, figural, procedural, semantic, and more. And more importantly, when you're using pegs linking a 00 to 99 PAO or even just plain old-fashioned magnetic imagery, the space of the memory palace really helps. Why? Because all the associative mnemonic imagery you will create always falls in spatial relationship to the other image. So for example, if I memorize a sequence of numbers like 223, 509, the images of Mr. Bean dressed as a nun, Mr. McFeely, the mailman, and my fellow Nemesis Brad Zupp will fall in the same order as the numbers. Of course, they could be placed either left to right or right to left, depending on the memory palace, or they could be standing on top of each other. But no matter what, there will be a linear relationship, and that relationship is inherently spatial. So basically, when you understand this about the mental imagery mnemonists use, then you know that you're always using a memory palace no matter what, and it only makes sense to use the memory palace tool to strategize, especially when it comes to large learning projects. Therefore, the correction to the bad advice that you don't need a memory palace is to realize that telling someone they don't need this powerful memory technique is like telling someone they don't need a home for their belongings. It's true, technically you don't, but those belongings are a lot more safe and secure to enjoy when they have a building around them, don't you think? And they always exist somewhere in space, so it only makes sense to arrange them nicely and give them the care they deserve. So too with the knowledge you want to memorize. Third, use spaced repetition software. Now, to be honest, there's probably a place for spaced repetition software in the universe, but so far, I'm not convinced that people are getting the results these companies and initiatives promise. It's a complex topic that changes depending on the software and the nature of the information, so we can't possibly cover it all. Broadly speaking, it's unlikely that looking at the same information over and over and over again will get better than 40 to 45% retention rates. This number is more or less the same that you'd expect from rote learning, which is exactly what the mindless repetition of looking at the same information on a loop should be defined as. Worse, a lot of these programs take forever to fill up with the information you need, or you just download someone else's list of information with no thought or concern for whether it's really the information you need. Plus, a lot of these softwares allow for self-testing, and let's face it, we're not that honest with ourselves. Sometimes the apps let us score how well we remember something on a scale from 1 to 5, and our answer determines how often the information will come back. Well, what if you keep feeding it wrong answers? It's not even an issue of dishonesty sometimes. It's a matter of what your recognition means in the moment. Worse, some of these apps will only let you see for as long as you have hearts or coins or some other goofy currency. And if you're not paying their fees, you're going to have your learning interrupted by ads every few minutes, if not seconds. There's something sick about this situation, even if the software itself is very interesting and I can see potential in it. In fact, I have a very strong idea for how to fix the problem by using augmented reality to enhance the mind's spatial memory abilities with respect to the other levels of memory used in mnemonic learning. Stay tuned for news of that soon. In the meantime, if you're interested, one of the better thinkers out there is Gabriel Weiner, creator of the Fluent Forever app. You can hear my discussion with him on the Magnetic Memory Method podcast. The link is in the description below. For now, here's what I suggest you do if you simply must engage in spaced repetition software, something that relates to one of Gabriel's ideas, but this approach involves a memory palace and emerged in my own practice from years before I knew of his teaching. First, get a stack of index cards, real index cards, not digital. You'll see why this matters in a moment. Second, decide what you want to memorize. Whether it's a number of facts, names, vocabulary, or phrases, every moment of preparation will pay off big time in the end. As St. Thomas Aquinas told us in his writings on memory, the mind favors organization, hence the preference of the ancients for memory palaces. And if it's good enough for Aquinas, it's good enough for me. Third, once you've organized your info, create your memory palace. I recommend drawing it in a memory journal. Fourth, take the first piece of information and instead of writing it on the index card, think about the magnetic imagery you would create to help you remember it. For example, let's take the phrase from Aurobindo I alluded to above. He who knows that as both in one, the knowledge and the ignorance, by the ignorance crosses beyond death, and by the knowledge enjoys immortality. This is an actual quote from the Isha Upanishad, and to memorize it, I started with He-Man tearing apart the tree of the knowledge of good and evil from Genesis, followed by Beyonce crossing a river with the character of death from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure 2, and so on. Whatever your magnetic imagery is, that's what you write on the card. As you do this, magnetically link it in your mind with the magnetic station in your memory palace. Fifth, move on to the next piece of information on the next card, and when you review, instead of mindlessly showing yourself the target information, you've created a situation of challenge. Your mind and memory will get a workout, and you'll benefit as a result as you grow your mnemonic skills. Even better, you're essentially reproducing the memory palace on paper. And when you look at a magnetic station in your memory palace, what you want to see in an example like the one I've given is He-Man tearing apart a tree. From that, you deduce, like Sherlock Holmes, that he must be the first word of the quote, and then you just follow the rest of your images from there. You decode them one at a time, and you do so as many times as necessary until the information crosses, like Beyonce, into long-term memory. How many times? Well, that's really up to your strength with the skills and the nature of the information. Dominic O'Brien talks about the rule of 5, which means triggering recall once a day for the first 5 days, once a week for the first 5 weeks, and once a month for the first 5 months. And in my experience, this is basically true. But depending on the information, I will recall the info 5 times a day for the first 5 days if I really want it to rattle off the top of my tongue. Now, I know you might be thinking that all this takes a lot of time, but nothing could be further from the truth. By using this strategy, you will save time. And if you've ever shoved a ton of vocabulary words into a spaced repetition app, you know this activity isn't exactly a time saver either. That's why people wind up searching around for the cards put together by others. But when you make your own cards, you can draw on them, use colors, and always work with the cards you actually need instead of what others seem to have conveniently put together for you. Only you are you, and one of the distinguishing factors of our best citizens on planet Earth is best seen in what those individuals are willing to do for themselves, instead of trying to ride on the efforts of others. The truth is that the method I'm suggesting is not only a faster path to long-term memorization, but it's creative and leads to recall rates more in the 85 to 99% recall range. There really are shortcuts in learning, but sometimes they just require a bit of prep. And you don't even need the index cards. The quote I just mentioned from the Isha Upanishad took me about 3 minutes, and the only time I've looked at it since is when I've tested my recall. And yes, this technique scales, precisely because a vast memory palace network is in place. The more memory palaces you have at the ready, the more information you can memorize on demand. You've just got to stop listening to the bad advice out there and really dig into these marvelous techniques. There's a lot more to learn, and the cool thing is I can also tell you that this quote is the 11th line of the Isha Upanishad, and it's on page 22 of Aurobindo's Upanishad's translation and commentary. For all the ins and outs and how I use these techniques in graduate school, check out the Magnetic Mary Method Masterclass sometime, or just get started with the free course. You can claim this now at magneticmarymethod.com/YT. The link is in the description below, and you'll be able to quickly complete 4 videos and go through 3 compact ebooks with examples, exercises, and a summary of the videos. And if you haven't done it yet, hit that thumbs up, get subscribed, and leave a comment below. Every short sentence and interaction helps me continue helping you because it lets the robots know that humans care about the great memory tradition we all need to defend. Thanks as ever for the view. Hope to hear from you soon, and until we get to speak again, keep yourself magnetic.